Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Today, topic of discussion is COVID SARS virus 2 comparison with COVID SARS virus 1, similarity and differences. For clarification, SARS COVID 1 may be used in my presentation as SARS COVID also because it is synonymous. Somewhere it is mentioned as 1 and otherwise it may not be written.
Have you shared?
Yeah. So, classification of the virus, it belongs to the order Nidovirales and family Coronaviridae. And there are 4 types of genus, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Both SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2 belongs to beta COVID virus. And as of now, we have total of 7 coronavirus, of which transmission, the natural host for almost all known virus is either bat or rats, and there are some intermediate hosts that are definitive, like for MERS we have camel, and for SARS-CoV we have civet cat. For SARS-CoV-2 the intermediate host is still not known. Only pathogenic, SARS virus that are pathogenic to humans as of now are MERS, SARS, and SARS-CoV-2. Other virus can cause some very mild influenza-like illness. Otherwise, they are almost asymptomatic. And most of the infection are only zoonotic. So, SARS epidemic, or the epidemic started in 2002 and was originated in China, and it almost involved 26 countries. But difference from current SARS-CoV epidemic is like it was concentrated over just 5 regions of China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Toronto, and Canada. Overall, the cases reported is just above 8,000, and the transmission was person to person, and the peak of the virus shedding, or that peak occurred in the second week of illness. And most cases were of human to human transmission, and of that 21% was in healthcare setting only, and they were attributed to absence of due to absence of inadequate infection control measures. So the epidemic was controlled by July 2003. That was like in a 8-month span the epidemic was controlled. So this was the like started up, it peaked quite rapidly and was controlled within 8 months. And the mortality was around from 8,437 cases, 813 patients died. So the method used for control of SARS-CoV in 2003 were, they did syndromic surveillance, that was active surveillance. And the surveillance method used was quite aggressive, like they have even used CCTV camera at the contact's home and daily temperature monitoring, and actively all the contact tracing was done. All patients were promptly isolated. There was strict enforcement of quarantine of all contacts, and in some area they have even applied community quarantine. Social distancing was advised, and exit screening by thermal scanner was done for all passengers departing from airport to different countries, and many countries also implied entry screening, but there was no travel ban. In the whole duration, we could not discover any vaccine or any specific treatment for SARS-CoV-1. So drug treatment they tried in SARS-CoV-1 were ribavirin. This was mostly used in Taiwan, and almost 90% of patients in Taiwan received ribavirin. So the studies done on ribavirin showed that like it is effective in decreasing the viral load, but on methodology and when it was retrospectively analyzed, like methodology, there was some flaws in the study, and it did not come into a clinically significant result. Other drugs that were used were lopinavir and ritonavir combination. Steroids like SARS-CoV-1 has a pattern like after 7 days there is peak of illness, and most of the ARDS symptoms happen in the after 7 days. So what they did is like most of the patients they gave low dose steroids, and in ARDS like illness they also tried the high dose steroids. The analysis showed that high dose steroid was associated with increased mortality and increased risk of complication, and there was also increase in the viral load with high dose steroid. Low dose steroid, though it helped in decreasing the inflammation and all, but there was increase in viral load with use of steroid. So the role of steroid is still controversial, and we don't have any evidence like steroid should be given for SARS or not. They also tried in very few patients they tried plasma and traditional Chinese medicines, and we don't have any evidence whether they are beneficial or not. So what is the problem, like what happened, what was wrong with SARS-CoV-2, like that in that time we had only some 8,000 cases, but now we have more than 6 million cases in COVID-19. So the problem is like it started from Wuhan, and Wuhan is the one of the largest city of central China with more than 11 million population, and it is major transport hub for land, water and air transport. And compared to last decade, the China travel has almost doubled, and urban population density is very high, almost tripled compared to last decade. And there is very proximity of people, and during work and commute is too much in Wuhan. And second thing was due to lack of, there was suddenly so high number of patients, and many patients that were less symptomatic, they were not hospitalized due to shortage of bed, and that led to seeding in the community. Finally, like before they could effectively imply the lockdown, there were 5 million people who have traveled out of Wuhan to different places, including Singapore and other parts of the world, for the Spring Festival. So, like before, lockdown could be implied, and it spread quite fast compared to SARS-CoV-1. So, just coming up to for the virus, basically it has 4 structural proteins: spike, membrane, envelope, and nucleocapsid. So, if we compare the initiator sequence and are almost similar in all 3 infective pathogenic virus, except for some substitution and so for evolution of virus, like virus should ideally multiply within the host and ensure its transmission. So and it should not ideally kill the host for very effective transmission. So like in evolution from SARS-CoV-1 to SARS-CoV-2, the transmissibility has increased and pathogenicity has reduced. I'll show you the exact number in the subsequent slides, like mortality rate and transmission. And this may be attributed to single nucleotide polymorphism. So this evidence that single nucleotide polymorphism is high in COVID virus, but whether it is clinically significant or not, because substitution in a base pair doesn't signify that that it will definitely result in difference in amino acid synthesis, because same 2 different codon can be called for same amino acid. And second thing is it may be a part of non-coding sequence. So whether this one change in single base pair result in change in the it is not like the antigenic shift and antigenic drift what we get in influenza. It is just a substitution of base pair, and till now we don't have any evidence like whether it is it will result in increase. Whether this only has resulted in increased efficacy of COVID-2, or it is just a non-significant. So other probable mechanism of viral replication is that it is an RNA-dependent RNA polymerase is involved in the translocation, and it is more prone to error compared to DNA-dependent DNA polymerase. And there is no proofreading mechanism in RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So number of errors expected are more. But this was same for SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2. This is not different. And we really don't know that why this transmission capability has increased and pathogenicity has decreased. As a definite, no definite evidence is there. So this is just a figure to compare the three epidemics till now. The SARS-CoV involved 8,439 cases with case fatality rate of 9.6%. Mean incubation period was same in all three viruses of around 5 days, but literature varies from 5 days to 14 days. For MERS, it was 2,519 cases with case fatality rate of 34.3%. For SARS-CoV-19, till April, it was 1.4 million, but now it is more than 6 million. And case fatality range differs from different study from 1.38 to 3.4%. So we can see that this transmission capability has increased over the epidemic, but the mortality rate is quite low. But if we compare the absolute number is still quite high compared to previous epidemics. So what has led to this high transmission could be, there could be three factors, like stability of the aerosol generated, that viral, if virus shed and transmit virus when it is, when the patient is asymptomatic. In that phase, if virus is shed and transmitted, so there are less chances of detection. And third is if there is high viral load in the upper respiratory tract. So to determine this study was published in NEJM recently, and what they did is they generated aerosols of SARS-CoV-2 and using a nebulizer, like same in the same cycle like of upper respiratory and lower respiratory tract. And this aerosol was checked for, like normal aerosols was seen on different surfaces like plastic, stainless steel, copper, and cardboard. What they find out like that is in all of the medium there is significant decline in the proportion of virus over time. In almost all of the medium, the titer decreased with time. So for aerosol, the study period was 3 hours, and for 3 hours, both COVID, this blue one is COVID-1 and red one is COVID-2. Both were viable for 3 hours, and this line is showing the 50% TCID 50. That is the dose that is required to infect 50% of the cell in culture, and their dose was above TCID for duration of 3 hours. For copper and all, the virus decreased very fast, and and it came just at the level of TCID around 5 hours. It stayed for comparatively long hours in stainless steel and plastic medium. This is showing the decay pattern of the virus, and in copper it is very fast. Other medium it is relatively slow, and cardboard it was detected even later. This is last showing the T half, and it is comparable for both medium and both viruses, like SARS-CoV-1 and both aerosols, copper. Except for cardboard, everything is comparable in T half. This is the absolute value. So no viable virus was found after 72 hours in plastic and stainless steel, whereas in copper it was 8 hours for COVID-1 and 4 hours for COVID-2. And cardboard, the COVID-2 had high in cardboard, but there was very high standard error in this estimate. So this cannot be the factor that it could be leading to difference in COVID-1 and COVID-2. In experimental condition, the aerosols and the particle deposition life is almost similar. So second thing they determined is like asymptomatic period. So this is the SARS-CoV-1 study. This is showing that when we took swab at initial days and 5 day, 10 day, and 15 days, so most high titer was there when at the day 10 of the illness. So this was the SARS-1, and the symptoms were most of the patient, they were symptomatic when they presented on day 1. Like most of the patient had in initial days they had fever, and respiratory illness and ARDS, as I told, it was late after 7 days. So in comparison to COVID-2, this was one study done in the Beijing with 82 infected patients, and they took swab. This was 2 patients, they took daily swab, and this is showing like there is in this there was delayed peaking at day 10 in SARS-CoV-1. In SARS-CoV-2, this peak is actually coming quite early in day 4 or day 5, and after that it declines. So what I want to convey, and this is the one more study done with 14 patients published in NEJM. This is also showing the same finding, like in COVID-2, it is peaking quite early within 5 days. So the problem is like in COVID-2, the patient up to 50% patient may not have fever with presentation, and at that time the viral titer are quite high and they are transmitting it without any symptoms. So the detection rate of a patient being infected with COVID-2 is quite difficult. Whereas in SARS-CoV-1, the peak was at 10 days. So by the time they would have come to healthcare, we would have already, they would have symptoms also, and we could have diagnosed and easily quarantined them. And other problem that rises with this is also like what we are doing is temperature screening for all patients. So missing a COVID-1 patient with temperature screening chances are very less, but COVID-2 patient we can easily miss with just temperature screening. So this is a data of a patient in China, and they concluded that SARS-2 fatality rate was low compared to SARS-CoV-1 and MERS. And other difference in symptoms is like fever and cough were predominant in both illness, but gastrointestinal symptoms were more common in SARS-CoV-1 compared to SARS-CoV-2. And it was similar was the difference in MERS and seasonal influenza, where gastrointestinal in complaints were more compared to SARS-CoV-2. So the fever can be absent in presentation, but in SARS-CoV-2 it can be up to 54%, whereas in COVID-1 it is around 1%, and in MERS it is around just 2%. So this has made a lot of difference in screening and identifying the patient. Other thing is the reproduction number of virus. Reproduction number is like it is a indication of transmissibility of virus, representing the average number of new infections generated by infection in a totally named population. So if it is more than 1, the infection is likely to increase. So for COVID-2, it is 3.28 and median of 2.79 according to this study. But WHO estimated it to be somewhere around 1.4 to 2.5. So compared to SARS-CoV-1, the mean incubation period is comparatively low in mean reproduction number is comparatively low in SARS-CoV-1 in comparison to SARS-CoV-2. So to summarize, SARS-CoV-2 has a low fatality and high transmission compared to COVID-1. Virus shedding peaks around day 5 in SARS-CoV-2, whereas in SARS-CoV-1 it was peaking around day 10. There is no difference in stability of the aerosols that are shedded by the patients. GI symptoms are less common in SARS-CoV-2, and asymptomatic presentation and viral shedding during that period is more common in SARS-CoV-2 compared to SARS-CoV-2. Thank you.